That morning, she had been sending emails to her children and running errands. She went and bought movie tickets for she and her husband to go to a movie later that night. And then while they were out to dinner, they were laughing, talking, getting ready to go to the movie, and all of a sudden she said, "I feel dizzy." And just like that, she was gone. Just like that. We lost our parents when we were fairly young. You know, when you would call your mom, I would call Vicki. She was the second person I called when I found out I was expecting my first child. Now later we found out it was cardiac arrest. It wasn't a heart attack, but my entire family, we were just completely dumbfounded. It was devastating. She was the big sister that I adored.
Vicki was a runner. She would run races and was very attuned to diet and things like that. I think that's why it was such a shock when she died suddenly.
She died on October 8th, and so Thanksgiving was just a few weeks later. And that was so hard because we always stayed with her. We used to take a walk on Thanksgiving. That was our ritual. She and I would the two of us would go walk along Lake Michigan up in Chicago, and she wasn't there to take the walk, so my brother-in-law went with me. And he used the opportunity to tell me all about her last day. So it was just a gift to know that she died a happy person.
She was certainly distraught over her sister's death, and she thought that she was a fairly healthy person, and I don't think was really too worried about her own risk of dying.
Some of my family and then some good friends of mine kept saying, "You need to go get checked. These things happen with families, and so you need to get checked." And I kept thinking, you know, what are they thinking? I don't have time for this. I'm fine. Having lost my mother at a young age and then losing Vicki, I knew I had to do whatever I could do to be there for my children and for Vicki's children. And so taking care of myself and taking the steps to protect myself became job number one instead of something I didn't have time to fit into my life. Finally, I went in, I called a friend of mine who works for a cardiology group, and I said, "Okay, I'm ready." Dr. Pimentel said, "Well, you are gonna be okay because we're gonna make sure you're okay." And I will never forget that because from then on, she never left a stone unturned.
We talked about putting a special monitor underneath her skin.
And so a few weeks later, I had one of the dizzy spells, so I went in to see Dr. Pimentel at that point, and they read the monitor, and she came over and put her hand on my hand, and she said, "You're gonna need a defibrillator." It felt relief at that point. I just thought, you know, now we have a course of action, and we have something that we know is going to protect me. After work, I would go to the fitness center and work out. I got on the treadmill and I was, you know, walking quickly. And after a few minutes, I noticed that my heart rate wasn't registering. And then another minute later, I felt really dizzy. And I stepped off the treadmill and the room started going dark. And then all of a sudden, I felt an electrical charge in my chest that about knocked me over. I figured out very quickly what happened, and I did not lose consciousness because the defibrillator had fired. So I called in the room. I said, "Somebody needs to call an ambulance." And I sat down on the floor, and my defibrillator fired again, and it fired a total of 5 times. We had tachycardia, we had fibrillation, we had a raised heart rate, we had everything going. Thank God I had the defibrillator, because it saved my life. Really, the reason I had the defibrillator was because of Vicki. And I think we all agreed that Vicki saved my life, without question.
Heart disease is the #1 killer in the United States as well as in the world. There's about 17 million people that die every year.
And a lot of people, when they meet me and find out that I've almost died, that I have a very serious heart condition, will say, "You don't look like you have heart disease." And my answer is, nobody looks like they have heart disease.
The AHA actually has funded $3.8 million last year alone in Kansas City. While this seems like a very large number, there's actually about $2 million that goes unfunded annually.
I think my story is a good example of how much more research there is to do.
I think people should consider investing in the AHA because it's their future. You never know when it's going to be you that needs the benefits of research from the American Heart Association.
What I miss about Vicki is not being able to share the stories about our children as they're growing up, and she has 4 grandchildren now that she's never met, and my daughter's getting married next year, and she won't be there to share it with me. It's just, you know what, it's the little things that you miss.